Hey everyone, welcome to the One Club Denver Fireside Chat. My dog is here with me in the office, so if you hear a bit of barking, it's all because of him. But anyways, I'm Heather and I'm the co-president of the Denver One Club alongside Andy Nathan. He's probably someplace out there. I'm also the director and co-founder of the Denver Ad School. So today's chat is titled The Magic of the Dynamic Duo. Our moderators are both from Cactus, a really cool agency here in town. Norm Shearer is partner and CCO. Jeff Graham is the president. And then today's sponsors are Denver Ad School, Fortnite Collective, $11 Bill, Integer, Odell Brewing, and of course, Cactus. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Norm and Jeff do their thing and announce all of the panelists today. And I hope everybody has a fun time. So take it away.
Cool.
Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Hey, everybody. I'm Jeff Graham from Cactus. Thanks for joining today for another one of our awesome fireside chats in the series. And when we think about some of the great agencies of our lifetime, Chiat, Wieden-Kennedy, Goodby Silverstein, they were born out of this sort of magical melding of two creative minds. But that is not what we're here to talk about today. Today is about an equally special partnership, maybe better, as we go through our conversation, that involves both sides of the brain, an odd couple of sorts, where a business-minded leader joins forces with a creative visionary to create a remarkable body of creative work and a track record of long-term client success stories. I feel very lucky in my own career. I got to see that firsthand, watching Alex Bogusky and Jeff Hicks back in the mid-2000s kind of steer the rocket ship of CPB back in that crazy time. And today, I feel really lucky to have, albeit a year, but a really cool partnership going with Norm here at Cactus.
Well, thanks, Graham. So one thing we wanted to do is just kind of prime the pump here a little bit before we dive into the topic, and just share a cool clip that we came across on the drum from our friends up at OKRP, where they talk about the power of teamwork and this dynamic duo and the cool things that come sometimes from when they disagree. So Lindsay, if you want to throw that clip up.
I think today, what it takes is being a great teammate and being able to partner with a larger team and working across categories with people from different disciplines, and really, for us, finding partnerships in people that know what they're doing.
So I think really what great creatives need is a partner, a creative partner. And I can talk about my partner, Matt, because he's not here, but he's over there. We've been 20 plus years as sort of a team. And advertising can be a sort of a dark, daunting place, and you need somebody to like rally you through those dark times, but also sort of inspire you. And I think for us it's a bit of 1 + 1 = 3. We have this thing we call the 85-15. We agree 85% of the time, and it's that 15% that we don't that really gets interesting. We're able to take sort of our different beliefs and dynamics and help push the work. But I've always said that anybody who comes up in advertising in the creative side, find a partner. Do not try to go through this alone. Find somebody that you can trust, that you feel is thinking the same way you're thinking and can finish sentences for you, because that's going to be your most powerful, valuable thing moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. So, today we're really excited that we have two of these teams right here with us. Super fortunate to have two really super talented teams from two very incredible agencies, and of these dynamic duos that are kind of performing every day with this unique alchemy of business and creativity. So introductions here of Mark Figliulo, founder and creative chair at FIG. Welcome. Judith Carr-Rodriguez, partner and CEO at FIG. So that's your FIG team. And then on Team North, Rebecca Armstrong, co-founder and CEO, and Mark Ray, co-founder and Chief Creative Officer. So I don't know why I introduced you guys as I mean, I know your teams, but it's not like there's going to be a death match today. So
East Coast, West Coast rap battle.
East Coast, West Coast rap battle. I love it. So, so thank you all for joining us. We know how busy you are. It's really special to just get to hear your perspectives and just make this a discussion today. So we'll kick it off. Maybe Team Fig, you guys could just throw out here on what makes this balance of creativity and business thinking work for you personally. Why did you go that route that you chose? And then how does that end up translating over the years? How's that translated to the agency, the team, and the culture?
Yeah, I mean, I could kick it off. The way Judith and I work is, well, first off, we're part of a larger team. So we're a partnership. So Robert and Richard, and we have other partners. So it is a partnership. Judith and I are the leaders of it, but it is a partnership. So that's really important. It's not just the two of us. But the way Judith and I work together, I think when you get to a point in your career where you're not a creative director or a business leader, you're just a generalist. You do both. Judith has very, very good taste in creative. I trust it explicitly. And I think it's the same with business. I have a lot of creative ideas when it comes to business. So you kind of move up the ladder and you kind of look at everything with the same eyes. How about you, Judith?
What I'd add is that Fig is a creative agency, and so our product is creative. So the role of business, if you like, in our agency is to make sure that we're doing the very best work that we can do for clients. So I think it helps also to be in our agency very clear that it is creative first, and that our job as an entire group of people is to make sure that we're being as valuable as we can do with our creativity for our clients.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, and that sort of, right, that it's like it's all creative, right? So it's business in service of creative. That's a really good,
yeah, exactly.
Really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it a lot. Like a great story is the best thing a brand could do. Tell a great story. So business and creativity, it's just linked. You can't really separate them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Rebecca and Mark at North, do you guys have a similar or a slightly different approach or personal experience from that standpoint?
Well, first of all, I think I've heard enough now to know what the question was. So I'll start by apologizing for my rural Oregon internet, which is likely to cut in and out. So this was one of those moments when I'm like, okay, I'm going to answer a question. It may not be the right one.
Do you want me to repeat it for you?
No, I think I got it. I think based on what Judith and Mark said, it's creativity, inspiring, and informing the business. I mean, my thought was, I came into this business for the creativity aspect of it, even though I represent the business side. And a lot of my experience over the last 30 years is that the creative thinking really heavily involves the business thinking. That having a different range of minds, considering even what on the surface may be sort of very logical left brain thoughts, is really, really helpful. So we are a creative agency, and creative comes first, and everything we do informs that. But I'm super grateful to be surrounded by highly creative minds when it comes to figuring out some business stuff. I don't know, Mark, what do you think?
Well, I think the bad news for everybody watching is it's clear that the answer here is to be, as a creative in this business, is to be named Mark and have a British partner. And that's a combination of things that I don't know everybody can achieve. So I feel like I watched recently, sort of coincidentally, there's this cool thing that I was part of with Richard Linklater, the director, and he was describing how he made Boyhood, the movie that was filmed over 12 years. And I watched this documentary about William Friedkin describing how he made The Exorcist. And the two things they had in common was they both said that they were allowed to be, they were both allowed to be creative problem solvers by solving narrative problems, not with budget, but with creativity. And the reason they were enabled to do that is because they had somebody who understood what they were doing, who went to bat for them to get the financing and to convince all the people that they needed to make, because making a movie is an expensive endeavor, as is often advertising. So I was struck by that, and it reminded me how much of, for me, there's an implicit trust that I felt from Rebecca from the first time we met 15 years ago, that Rebecca understood creativity in a way I'd never really experienced with another person who came from more of the business and account side. And conversely, I think, I came from the Midwest and grew up with farmers and sort of had this side to me that was very practical and very, think very much about like the reality of how you get things done. And so from that standpoint, Rebecca's talents operationally, I think I was able to relate to a lot of what Rebecca does intuitively. And so that overlap, I think, Mark and Judith said it very well, that overlap creates a kind of a bond, and then your team around you feels that, and I think this sort of enables them to be even more creative, and whether it's on the business side or the creative side or channel media side.
That's awesome. Well, and this is kind of a follow-up to that. You guys have really set the table nicely for what that dynamic duo concept is, and you spend so much time together as the leaders in your, like you're each other's work wife, work husband, so you get that constant exposure as a creative person to the business side, or a business person, constant exposure to creativity. And I'm curious, how does that partnership for you guys, how does that make you better at your job? How is having that just symbiotic partnership with, say, a business person make you a better creative leader, or as a business person sitting next to somebody who's just like brimming with creativity all day, actually make you sharper on the business side? Curious about that.
Can I stop by saying I'm not really sure about the work husband, work wife entitlement? And that I'm not sure which. Maybe I'm the work husband. Is that right, Mark? Can you get me some
Probably.
coffee?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that it's a creative versus business thing. I just think, so in our experience anyway, we're very good at challenging each other on the kinds of thinking that we're doing, even down to, again, back to the sort of left brain example. Even if I'm trying to tackle a really kind of logical client compensation problem, actually having Mark's eyes on it is really, really helpful. And while I can't say he's fantastic with money by any means, he has a really good perspective on how things are perceived or how things are presented often. So that makes me better as an account person.
Yeah, I would agree. That I think our industry in whole, I'm going to go wide for a second. I think we've spent a lot of time the past 20, 30 years pulling this industry apart, that we pulled media away from it, and we pulled, digital is different than, creative or whatever. We have all these labels, and we do create separate companies, and it's become so fragmented. I don't think any of us understand it anymore. I really don't. What we do, and it sounds like you guys do as well, is we pull that all back together, because it's really just one thing: telling great stories that grow brands. So when Judith and I talk, that's what we're talking about. Like, how's it come together, not who does what.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's shift gears just slightly and talk about disagreements. Like, what if you guys don't see eye to eye on something, with tough or big decisions, whether that's new business things or around growth, or those decisions I think we all face as business leaders, that maybe it's not a unanimous decision amongst the team. So do you have a process for tiebreakers? Do you have a philosophy around that tension? That obviously you guys are so successful together, you've learned how to kind of wrangle that tension into being a bonus. We'd love to hear some more details around that. Do you just use rock, paper, scissors like Graham and I do?
I'll jump in here, because Mark and I were together yesterday, actually, in the office, and we were doing a bit of prep for this session, and we were like, God, disagreements, like, what do you do? I'll tell you, like, even when we first met each other, so Mark was thinking of starting his own company. He was leaving TBWA Shite Day, and we were introduced by a mutual friend. And I honestly have thought about New Shoes longer than I thought about starting or joining Mark in Fig. Like, it just felt like exactly the right thing to do. And I was brimming with enthusiasm and excitement, and I couldn't wait to get started. We couldn't wait to get started. And that sense of trust, Mark, you said it earlier, Mark Ray, you said it earlier about how much trust is so important. Like, that has been the backbone of our relationship for the last 8 years. And we haven't actually had a major disagreement yet. The day might come. So we haven't.
We're working on it.
We haven't got a war story to tell. Mark Figliulo said it earlier. We are one of 8 partners at Fig, and so we don't unilaterally make decisions. We tend to vote. We do vote on all major things, including like, should we pitch something, or should we. Any of those big things. So at the moment, there's no real need for there to be a tiebreaker between the 2 of us, because there's 8 of us. But there hasn't been a big disagreement so far. So we'll have to keep you all posted.
All right. What about the North team?
Bex, do you want to take that, or?
Oh, you take it. You talk.
I flew out from Boston when I was working at Arnold Worldwide to meet Rebecca, and it was at a very transitional time, as Jeff Graham knows. We worked together there. That I was really considering at that point that I didn't know if I wanted to go east. I always knew I wanted to go west, and I happened to get a recruiter call, and I was very, very steeped in a lot of things happening at Arnold. So first I said no, and then my wife said, we've always wanted to live in Portland or Seattle, so why wouldn't you fly out there and just find out? And I got off the plane. As I was getting off the plane, the last thing in my earphones was a song from Radiohead, and Rebecca picked me up from the airport, and I got in the car, and the exact same song was playing, and I just sort of made a joke about it, that's a little synchronicity, that's a good sign, but we still kind of joke about that, and it sounds minor, but it turned out we both love that song very much. And there's sort of a broad thing that Judith, you just talked about, that I think for anybody, that's really looking to find some insight into why these things work. I just think there was a broader sense of intuitive trust that night at dinner, that I just felt like I'd kind of met somebody that we both agreed on. We saw things through the same lens on many topics, not just advertising. When it got to advertising, we realized that we really did see things through the same lens. We'd both been at bigger agencies and agreed that the business was moving in a way that a nimble creative boutique was probably going to be more fun to work at, and actually be of more value to certain kinds of clients. And so it went from the broad, like, we both sort of have the same musical taste. We both sort of, we're both also, Rebecca and I are both introverted. And I think we sort of realized that it's not exactly a business for introverts. And so we sometimes call North a sanctuary for introverts. And I think on a highly intuitive level, we both just knew, just after that dinner and the next day of me coming in and interviewing a bit with others, that we just had a very intuitive trust that was there at the very beginning. So it reminds, what Judith said, reminds me a lot of the same experience that I had with Rebecca. And at that point, I was kind of like, okay, I want to do this. Because I knew having a partner would be, I had a good partner actually in Jeff in some ways, and another guy at Arnold named Steve Swanson. I had really good partners there, but I just knew I needed a life change. And and it felt like this was going to be a great new chapter, primarily because I just intuitively trusted Rebecca. So I sort of took a leap off the cliff, as it were, just based on intuition and trust. I think that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark.
Go.
It's an interesting discussion, actually, because I think some other agencies or other partnerships are formed because people want to bring in somebody who has a great resume and is super famous and has tons, potential new business leads. But that could be really disruptive of a group's culture if you're not all on the same page or have all the same sort of goals or feelings about the kinds of work you want to do or where you're going. So I think I think Mark Ray and I are really lucky, just having a sort of shared vision off the bat of what we wanted to be and what success meant to us. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that I think you see some of the more kind of exciting, frictiony arguments soap opera stuff and some other agencies that don't have that perhaps bring partners in for different types of reasons. Sorry, Mark.
No, not at all. I was just going to tell a story about it, the theme of trust, and it wasn't a fight, but it was a moment of tension. When we started the agency, we actually had stakes from Publicis. We were supposed to be an agency under the Publicis banner, and we were chugging along and it's working well. And Judith and I started working together, and we quickly, once you start working with the lawyers from the Publicis side, realized, hey, this doesn't feel like us anymore. And but I had connections there, and I had kind of made some promises and stuff, and we were literally in the room, and I was very torn of what to do here. Do I stay on kind of the easy path, which is stay with a bigger company, or be a true independent? And Judith and my other partners, Richard and Robert, they were on the other side, and I actually thought we should stay because it was easier, and it just was in my mind. And I didn't know, is the honest answer, but Judith did know. And she told me, this isn't a good deal, we should pull out, we should be independent. And like I said, I didn't know, but I did trust her, and it was the best decision we've ever made. So it just shows, you get you go through those battles together, and it is really important, but it all comes down to trust.
That's an awesome story, and it kind of reminds me of that video we saw at the outset where the OKRP guys were talking about that kind of 1 + 1 = 3, and you talked about the decision to stay independent. I'm curious about just on that topic of like decisions that you've made as a team, where just Mark, you just described one, but decisions you've made as a dynamic duo that turned out better than you thought or could have hoped, largely because of that trust that you guys have, or just having the perspective of the other that led you to a place, making a decision in your business. Is there anything that comes to mind where you guys made like a critical decision, and because of that kind of alchemy between you two, it turned out better than any decision you could have made on your own?
I told my best story. That's all I said.
And I know I'm putting you on the spot. That's a tough.
Mark Ray could probably color this in a bit, but I think where we've been exceptionally good is walking away from our biggest clients when they became sort of, the relationship was so toxic, it was more damaging to the agency. There's one in particular I can think of, which I wasn't totally sure about, because I'm wearing my financial hat saying this doesn't pencil out. But Mark was like, this is so bad, we have to do it. And it'll be better for us as an agency, even from the outside, if we do. And I can remember the day itself when we actually almost had to rehearse our resignation in person to this client. And we also we had a client on the inside who knew we were going to do it, and they turned out to be a terrible actor, which didn't really help us. So there was a moment where we were all trying not to laugh, but we did it. And I think we do agree, Mark Ray, that it was probably one of the best decisions that we made, although it was super tough.
Yeah, it was the most galvanizing decision we made together, and it was made 100% on it. Well, if it wasn't certain that Rebecca and I shared the same perspective, sort of almost financially, ethically, creatively, morally, if it wasn't clear that we didn't sort of share the same DNA from those perspectives, it became very clear that day that we literally walked in and presented a bunch of work and then handed the letter over with the work and said, there's the best work we can do given the very sort of ill-conceived brief that you gave us. And here's our resignation letter. And as we were walking back to the agency, we walked half a mile because we thought we could use the decompression time. Rebecca and I both just sort of looked at each other and said, 100% feel that was the right thing to do. Went back, told the agency. To this day, that was probably that was only a few years into our partnership, and 13 years later, we still have people who are still at North who tell us, well, that's why I'm still at North. So,
wow, that's awesome. What you know, there's a lot of people in attendance watching, and so Mark and Rebecca, as introverts, it's a good thing we can't see the crowd, I guess, with Zoom here. So, but maybe you could share. It just, some of this discussion makes me think a little bit. We have a lot of attendees today that are other fellow agency leaders, some people starting agencies or starting new endeavors in the kind of creative services world, which we know is so diverse in terms of application these days, which is wonderful. Maybe could you guys share just a little bit of advice to somebody who's maybe just started out in the last year, like Graham and I, in a new, you know, here we are a year into our new relationship as a team. What kind of advice would you guys give? You know, is there like one thing or a couple of bullets that you have that's like, hey, always try to have, you know, have this in mind, or, you know, a tip for us?
For me, it is, I think success rests, particularly in today's world, on being a team rather than being an individual. I think teams make modern businesses successful. Partnerships make modern businesses successful more than individuals. So I think if you can both find a partner or set of partners that you really trust, that are going to be cultural additive rather than the same, I think that's a big recipe for success. The next thing I would say is that you have to then prioritize the relationships that you have within that partnership, because real trust and real relationships take a lot of time, energy, and effort, and they aren't just built by having a meeting or, you know, discussing the status of whatever's going on in your business. Like, actually making time for relationship is what we've discovered is hugely important, particularly in this more remote world that we've been in for the last year. Making time for the 8 partners of FIG to be together, to work together. I don't mean necessarily physically, but like prioritizing that time is so important.
And doing things together that aren't work, right? So, that's Judith, that's awesome advice.
I would add to, like, I don't think we're not in that, or put it this way, there's different agencies, different structures, obviously. So sometimes it is one person that is just leading it and like, follow me. And it's the cult of personality. Those are effective businesses. I think they do run into long-term problems, but in the short term, they get there really quick. And you could do some great work and it could be a great environment. But I don't think it's a sustainable model. So it's really what your objectives are. A more sustainable model is more of a group that everybody trusts and work together. I think it's a distinction. You should have that at the top of your mind. Having said that, the group thing, that one really important thing is that doesn't mean there's not a leader. Like Judith and I lead the agency very clearly, but we do absolutely listen to everybody and want opinions, and we do it together. Yeah. So there's just different models, is my point.
There's a saying I like very much: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a team or go in a group. I think that's the future for many businesses.
That's really, I love that.
Yeah. What about North? Do you guys do you have any thoughts on advice for any new partnerships forming out there?
I've got one that just based on Mark, what you were just saying, on how to, this is the relationship advice. What's become apparent over the last year when we've been shut up in our respective homes? I actually haven't seen Mark Ray in the flesh since March 2020. What we used to have when we were having, and it's very difficult for introverts to argue, as you might know, what we used to have if things got hard and difficult at work was a fantastic restaurant up the street called Just a Pasta, that we would just call it on a moment's notice and go up there. And for some reason, it was easier to hash stuff out over a plate of pasta and a glass of wine than it was in the context of the agency. And it's become obvious in the last year that we don't have that place, so we have to try and figure out how to make that place exist virtually, which has been difficult. So my advice is, when it's hard to have those difficult conversations in a business environment, quickly decamp and go to your safe place, whether that's a restaurant or a home or somewhere else. It's much easier to have those conversations there.
Rebecca, do you have like a pasta flag that you wave and
Yeah.
It's more like
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Literally, I'd see this.
Well, you must not argue very much, because neither of you look like you eat a lot of pasta.
Yeah.
The one theme that keeps coming up is it doesn't seem like any of us fight all that much, which is great. I don't know about you guys, but partnership to me, and certainly Judith and I, it's never black and white. It's, I'm trying to figure this out. How are you trying to figure it out? And let's help each other figure it out. It's usually you don't have that black and white thing. Or if it is that black and white and I really believe this, Judith will go along with it. Or conversely, if she really believes in something, I'm going to follow her. But it's usually, how do we think about it?
And how do we help each other think? Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm doing it this way. How are you doing it?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say really quickly what Mark said earlier about how the industry is coming together more than it's pulling apart is, I would say too, like, as you're thinking about a partner, don't think about it on paper, what's good for advertising, because advertising is a fickle beast. And as in the 90-second thing, it's a dark and it can be a dark place. For me, I think that what Rebecca and I acknowledged in each other was we both, our influences, and sort of, even we're both Gen X, right? And, Graham knows this about me. I look at the model of advertising that always worked for me was to treat it like an indie rock band, where you don't have like some huge LA producer coming in to produce it. You just kind of trust yourselves, and it's sort of the old REM model. It's democratic, and everybody has good ideas. And even though the drummer is primarily a drummer, if he can also pick up an accordion and make that into a great idea or a great song, that was the culture that Rebecca and I both believed in intuitively. And that's sort of what works for us. That doesn't, like Mark and Judith have both said, that business model doesn't mean it's the best one on paper. Although my proudest thing is 15 years as an independent, profitable business in advertising. Like, I never thought I'd be part of that, let alone be one of the co-founders and owner of it. But I think it's because we recognized intuitively how we as human beings are at our strength and in terms of how we work with clients. And we didn't do that sort of writing it down on paper, what looks best to clients. We did that by trusting kind of just who we are as human beings and saying, let's make that work. So that would be my one thing I'd offer.
Wonderful.
It's awesome. I want to pause here because I know we've got about 10 minutes, I think. And we want to make sure that folks out in the audience have a chance to ask some questions. So if you would jump into the chat, you can just type
Actually,
your.
It's not that. Sorry, Graham, to correct you. It's Lindsay asked us. You have to go to the Q&A section.
Oh, sorry, the Q&A, not the chat. Don't listen to me.
Yeah. So on the far, so any attendees on the far right is a Q&A. At the bottom is a Q&A button, and Lindsay and the One Club team can direct your questions.
Yeah, but I was going to ask one more of you guys. I just running an agency of any size, small or large. It can, Mark talked about, as you advance in your career, you sort of get more horizontal. The other thing I notice is it gets lonely, and in that leadership space, and whether you just have one partner or 8 partners, I don't know. I like to talk about just the ability to vent and to vent sideways and never, out into the agency. And I so value having Norm to be able to go and, talk things through and, and vent on those days that, this business does what this business does to your brain. And I was just wondering if you guys could talk about just that kind of special peer-to-peer advice and counsel that really only you guys can give to each other, and just how that helps you lead the agency and do what you do every day.
I don't know that it's super magic. By the way, I should acknowledge that we have a third partner, the magnificent Jordan Delaper. I say that just in case he's in the audience and I have to deal with him later. Hi, Jordan.
You're gonna have to take them out for pasta if you're not careful.
We do give each other vent space. That does work. That sideways, there's like vent moment, and we do give each other the permission to even announce that I am about to vent. So take it as you will. You don't even need to respond. The next 5 minutes will be me venting. And that works okay. I think Ray might say we don't vent enough between.
Yeah, well, I think one of the important point is we've tried really hard to help North not be, North be apolitical. And so I think we're reticent to do much venting at all, because sometimes if you open the box, it's like, it just seems to, I don't know, it's Pandora's box when you start venting, right? But it is healthy, and I do to do within your partnership. And Rebecca and I definitely do. We don't go, I'll say this, we don't go on very long with it, because Rebecca has a very wry and short, brief, pithy way of getting to the point. So we will sometimes sort of aside to each other on Slack, or if we were in person when we were off at the restaurant. But generally, I think for us, advertising can be so difficult that sometimes if you lean into that too much, it can seep out. So we tend to just really try to say, let's be kind to each other and to our clients. And if somebody's not, then we'll deal with it. That's a little bit of a Pollyanna response, Jeff. I know you were looking for some dirt.
We try to, you vent to each other or up. You can't complain down. And I go off on a little bit of a tangent. It's come up a couple times that this is a difficult business. Personally, I disagree with you. I think it's a great business. I've been doing it a long time. I get paid to be creative. That I'm done. That's great. And I think in general, we do all vent. All of leaders in this industry vent a lot to the young people coming into the industry, and we need them to come into the industry. It's a great place for creative people of all sorts to make a living. So I want to turn the conversation around towards positivity a little bit.
Cool.
Hear, hear.
Well, jumping in, we've got a few questions piling up here, so I want to make sure we get to our audience here. So how does the CEO CCO partnership work within the context of the larger management team and other departments like digital, media, and account leadership? And you guys, Fig, you talked a little bit about that. If you want to add anything else to that, or North, with how does that work for you?
I'm quite practically, operationally, the disciplines report to me as the CEO. Mark, as the founder, he's naturally incredibly innovative, very future-facing, very focused on what communications could be. And so our partnership is really about that. Kind of, I look after the day-to-day and he looks after all of the future.
North, Rebecca or Mark, anything to add to that?
Sorry, there's really only about 20 of us. So it sort of splits down a little bit more down the middle. Or rather, I would say everybody in the creative production teams, and that could be digital, not digital, doesn't matter. 85% of the work we do is digital anyway. Report into Mark, and everybody else on the media teams and account management team report into Jordan, and I don't really do anything. I think that's how that works. Mark, perhaps you can add some more structure to that.
Well, that's Rebecca and I didn't even really have titles for 7 years. We finally gave Rebecca the CEO title. To some degree, a little bit of the flip of what Judith said. We realized that I mean, I love being steeped in the work. So I work very hard to stay ahead of things and try to give the agency vision for the future. But I'm also sometimes editing our films, and so so Rebecca, we realized that Rebecca's probably our best person to be outward facing to the world and to be the voice of North. But we're a totally equal partnership. So we just kind of we put the words co-founder as our first in our title, and then CEO and CCO, to reflect that it's an equal partnership, and then to kind of say, well, that gives you some idea of our primary skill set, but after that, we're pretty, it's pretty united front.
This is an interesting question from the audience about how you guys achieved this alignment. I think you've talked about it in sort of very organic terms. You went to dinner, and knew like instantly, sort of like a bolt of lightning. Somebody asking, does it help to do basically like a workshop with your leadership team, almost like run your own process for, say, getting to a brand insight or a human truth that you're going to use to do your work? Do you ever use your own process on yourselves to get that kind of alignment for how you're going to lead your agency or employees, or do you achieve it just in that organic way we've been talking about? Do you ever use a process on yourselves to get aligned?
Well, I'll jump in really quickly with a quick answer. We realized a while ago that the smarter upstream we are, the better. Like we have this analogy of, we're all in this business, we're deadline driven, we're delivery driven, we're all headed on the river to a waterfall, and that's the deadline. So, the smarter you are when you put in, as opposed to thinking about it while you're going over the falls, and is just makes life better. So we tend to gather everybody up front and make it pretty democratic up front, and get as many voices in up front at the top of things, and try to remind ourselves it's so easy in creative business to, I'm a natural procrastinator, so I have to really force myself to push it up front. But Rebecca and I work better that way from the beginning. When we're more in communication up front on something and we develop a vision, we get everybody around us. We provide leadership, but we make it very open. And then at some point pretty soon, we say, okay, this is what we're doing. And that's Rebecca and Jordan and I. We just say, okay, this is the way we're going. This is the North thing that we're going to bring to this that we don't think anybody else will. And so that's what we're going to do. And the sooner we do that up front and everybody knows that vision, then, everything else afterwards feels a lot better. So that would be the best process point I could offer.
I will say that we do, as it pertains to us North, the agency, we do bring in our friend and outside consultant, Jeff Sweat, like at least once a year, to kind of go through workshopy stuff with us, to keep us honest about ourselves and our position in the market.
Yeah, outside perspective is really important.
One process that we do and it's recent because we grew as an agency, but we have added partners, and we talked about these 8 partners. Our other partners are really running the day-to-day accounts and creative and planning and data and media. It's what that allows us to do, just for Judith and I, to think about the industry and where it's going and how we could get better at our jobs in general. I do think it's another thing our industry does. We focus it with the problem at hand, one brand at a time. And we spend a lot of time thinking, well, how could we do it in general? How do we get better at what we do?
Mm-hmm.
And then we apply that learning to that team, and it's just a constant feedback loop. So it's a luxury to have that time to think about the bigger picture.
That's awesome.
What do you think, Norm? Do we have time for one?
Yeah, let's try one more. I really like this question that came in that's less about the partnership and the sort of CEO, CCO duo, but I really love this question about just how are you guys feeling about future of creativity and how that interweaves with pop culture and important social issues? Like, where's that for your agencies right now?
Well, I'll just say there is a little bit of a saying that Rebecca and probably Jeff remembers how much I love analogies, but I do have this. I really mean this. I think this is really true. I love music, art, pop culture. I'm a student of that, and I think it makes me good at my job. And I just have always believed that marketing is sort of a guest in entertainment's home. You know, it's like that's where we compete for attention. That's where we're interrupting people. That's where we're, for the most part, you know, I'm obviously an out-of-home board's not sitting necessarily in the middle of entertainment, but culturally speaking, it feels like most of the digital channels we're in now, you're interrupting somebody's online experience, and that's usually to entertain themselves or escape or shop. You know, shopping is a reward, all of that. So sort of remembering for me that the more we can be smart about all, you know, we have on our Slack, we have a lot of Slack channels, and we have now Zooms every week where we all talk about the movies and TV shows we watched over the weekend, because I believe strongly, and Rebecca, this is sort of goes back to Rebecca and I synchronizing around Radiohead. We just both feel like being knowledgeable about what's happening in the world makes us a much more valuable agency.
That's awesome.
I do think I'm going to rant and then I'll be positive. The rant, I think creative has gotten worse over the past decade. I have my bad guy. I think it's performance marketing. It does its job, and we've learned from it. But I think it's coming to. I think we've gotten a lot of what we're going to get out of it.
Right.
What's been hurt in that process is long-term brand building through storytelling. So that's what we focus on for the most part. So I think it's coming back. I think I'm more and more hearing conversations about we need to bring creativity back, and that's from clients. So that's really good news, I think. So I think it's going to get very positive. The other thing I'd say about the pop culture, I think is really important is I read a thing that get used to having celebrity presidents. And if you think about it, it does make sense why it's happening. Is the information age, with just too much information out there, we could only remember so much. So we're going to remember the stuff that is cultural, pop culture. So of course we're going to use that in messaging. So I think that's here to stay.
Yeah, I joke, you know, how there's like the different eras of humanity, of civilization, like the agricultural, and then I think we're in the celebrity era. So, I mean, it's just wild, the power of that right now. But that's awesome. Well, maybe there's time for one. This is a fun, easy one. I think we have 2 minutes left here. So, when was the last time you apologized to your partner? And how do you recognize your faults as individuals and work through them as a team? So I know you talked a little bit about that before, but I love the specificity. Anyway, I love the specificness of, I went to art school, bear with me, so not a writer. But just when was the last time you apologized? I think that's a fun question.
Well, I tried to apologize to Mark last year. And then he said I didn't need to apologize. And then it was kind of an apologize off fest, which may be an introvert thing. We were just really sorry for a while. And it's just because we kind of lost it with each other. And I think some of that was quarantine and not having just a pastor at hand to go and hash some stuff out. So we got really introvertedly, secretly mad, and a lot of Slack messages were slung, and then we just were really sorry. That was it, really.
Apologize off. That's exactly what it was.
Beautiful.
I'm not sorry. You're sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
I think my main apology to Judith is because I talk too much. So I don't have the introvert problem. I have the other one. So I talk a lot, and what usually happens in our relationship, I talk a bunch, and then Judith makes sense. She says something very concise at the end. So Judith, over to you. Make sense of that.
Nothing to add.
Yeah, I have the same problem, Mark. So
That's the art director thing.
Yeah. Well, you guys, thank you so much. We know how busy you all are and your agencies are, and but it's also, this is a really important discussion, and I think great stuff for our industry and everybody attending today. Really great advice and insights and points of view that just made this really special. So huge treat and full of gratitude for you guys all taking the time.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. So
Thanks for carving time out of your day.
Yeah.
And just sharing stories and the wisdom that comes from your partnership. I got a ton out of it. So, thank you so much for doing this, guys.
Thank you for asking us. It was
Oh,
really well
thanks for
put
having-
together. And at first, Rebecca and I were like, oh, it sounds like therapy, but this turned out really fun.
Good, good.
Thank you so
Hey,
much, everybody.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
great.
Any
Thank you.
closing comments, Heather or Lindsay from One Club team?
Yeah, that was fabulous. Thanks again for coming. And yeah, I learned a ton. And I definitely feel you on the apology tour. I do that a lot with Jesse. But anywho, yeah, we're going to be sharing out our next chat soon. So just follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all the socials. That'll be chat 4. So it'll be coming up soonish. So thanks again, everybody, for coming, and have a great Friday.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.